How's it going, Steve?
Great, Stephen. How are you?
Good. I'm fine, thank you. I'm in the Air Canada Lounge in Los Angeles. So if you hear a lot of noise or people walking in the background, that's why. I'm flying up to Vancouver for the premiere tomorrow night and there.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
Fantastic.
good. I live there now, but I just happen to be here for work this week. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I thank you so much for the chance to chat with you. And actually, can I say it's a privilege to speak to a fellow PH. Uh,
That's nice. Yeah, exactly. The PH, exactly. Because Angie even asked me. She said, I see your name is written Stephen, but everyone calls you Steve, right? I go, yeah. I like the informality of Steve, but in written form, I like Stephen. Yeah.
I just found that
Yeah.
nobody would pronounce it properly.
Mhm.
So it's Stefan, right?
Now,
No,
yeah, I
no.
get that a lot now, Stefan. I get that a lot. I think when I was younger, I didn't, but I think now, I don't know. Maybe it's Stephen Curry. He screwed it all up for us.
That's right. My friends all hate it because I refuse to call him that. I call him Stephen Curry, and
Oh,
they
do
don't
you?
like
That's great. That's funny. I love it. Great.
Can I just say, Drinkwater is an absolute joy.
Oh, thank you.
You had me. You got me. I was, a hardened soul when I started watching the film, but I
I
just
love it.
I fell in love with it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful film.
Oh, thank you. And we feel the same. It's it's hard to like brag about your own thing, but we all feel it. And it's very funny, ironically, in this lounge, Eric McCormack was here because he's heading to Toronto to do publicity for the film. So we're both in the lounge at the same time. So Drinkwater keeps bringing us around, and he loves the film also. He's doing all of this. He's not getting paid for it. He's just doing it on his own because he just loves the movie that much, and we all do, and we all feel that way. It just brings a smile to my face. Like I've seen it 100 times, but I'll go to the movie tomorrow night and I'll watch the whole thing with the audience because the audience reaction is so infectious because everyone laughs and everyone's having a great time, and that just makes me happy. So
And McCormack is so good in this. I
yeah,
think I
it's
wrote
so
in my
good.
review he's almost unrecognizable, and not just because of like his
Yeah,
facial hair. It's just he's just bouncing all over the place. Like it's
yeah, he's so good. I wish I could have put more of him in the movie. It was just like he was just so great. Every time I saw it, I cracked up so many times while we were shooting. It was really, and then him and Daniel did a lot of improv too. So stuff I wasn't prepared for came out of their mouths, and I would just laugh, blurt out loud, ruin a few takes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What? How did you
Yeah.
get involved? What was it that drew you to this particular film?
Well, Graham Fraser, the producer, he had heard about me, and he had seen my film Indian Horse, which was obviously a completely different movie. But he said, that guy's a really great filmmaker. And he's Canadian. They're like, yeah. Anyway, long story short, the script came my way. And during the pandemic, I was in a cabin in the woods trying to get away from everybody. And I read the script, and I went, and I smiled, and I laughed. And I went, you know what? This is what the world needs right now. We need a good comedy. I haven't seen a good comedy in a long time. And I thought, yeah, it'd be great to be part of one. And so we had a great Zoom meeting, and he had said, well, we'll take the weekend. It was a Friday. So we'll take the weekend to consider and call you on Monday. And literally like an hour later, they called back, said, you got the job. So it was great. It was instant chemistry between us because he knew I loved it as much as he did. And his son, Luke, wrote the film, and he did a great job. And, we changed a few things over the course of my involvement in it to change the ending, change a few other things to make it better, stronger film the way it is now. But the script originally was really fantastic to begin with. So.
Well, it just sort of like you said, it's just a fun, like it's really well written comedy.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and unashamedly in John Hughes, classic John Hughes form. Um, I think you even referenced Pretty in Pink at one point in the.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty big with her dress. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering for you, what's the legacy of Hughes, and why do we keep coming back to this era, this style of filmmaking?
I think it's. I mean, obviously, young kids don't get it, but I think people that are a little in the older bracket, they get it because it just brings us back. I feel to a time of innocence and our youth where these films came out. They were huge blockbusters. We'd line up around the street to just go see one film. So I think it just brings us back to that where good stories were being written. I think nowadays there are great scripts. Don't get me wrong, but Hollywood's making the remakes, and nothing against Marvel movies, but there's a lot of those. But the nice, good middle ground movies are just not being made. And so I'm hoping that Drinkwater has something to do with a little bit of revival of that, and everyone that does make the link between Drinkwater and John Hughes. I mean, it can be that's the biggest flattery ever. Like, that's such an honor, because he just made so many iconic movies. Yeah, and I didn't rewatch a lot of his films when I went to make Drinkwater, because I didn't want to be tainted by his view of things. I wanted to make the movie personal to myself, make it a Steve Campanelli movie, but with a tribute to him, and have that feel. So, and luckily I just had such an amazing cast and crew to make the movie that we shot the whole thing in 16 days, which is, normally that would be 25 to 30 days on a film like that. So, hats off to everyone that was involved. And we all felt we were making something pretty special. So, and to be able to see and honor Canada in the way it should be, I think we all saw that. We weren't hiding Canadian flags and Tim Hortons and things like that.
This may be the most Canadian film I've ever seen in a lot of ways.
We've heard that a few times. People say, "Yeah, you're making any more Canadian than you did." We didn't have any A's in there though. I think just at the end, that was about it.
No, that's true. That's true. It's like you held it back.
I held it back to the very end, because originally it said the end, and I said, we got to put one A in this movie, so I had the ... A just for the last joke. Yeah.
Well, I was wondering for you, like, what do you think it means to use the Canadian voice? Because this film, the Canadian voice is more than just Timmy's, and no, it's not like Duncan.
Exactly.
It's a phenomenal line. I was like,
it's a great line. I know.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering from your perspective, what that means to you.
Well, it means a lot, because, I was raised in Montreal, then I moved to Vancouver in the 90s, and then LA for 25 years. So I moved back to Canada 6 years ago, and I love it. And so by being away from it for so long, it made me appreciate it that much more. And that's why I wanted to come back, because I just felt it's my country, it's my roots. I have dual citizenship, so I love both countries, but obviously Canada will always be in my heart and always be the place I want to be. And so I wanted to make like a love letter to Canada, because we very rarely get to see that. It's always hidden. It's always, Toronto's playing for New York, and Vancouver's playing for Seattle, and all this. So, obviously there are great Canadian films that show our country, but this one just went over the top. Didn't want to hide anything. And I'd love to do one day. I think it'd be kind of cool to do an entirely Canadian film and go province to province and just kind of make it all include everybody. Get all the way to Newfoundland. And it'd be really kind of neat to have every aspect of Canadian culture and our heritage in there too.
And I know you said that you live in Vancouver and you've also spent time in LA. The Canadian American dynamic in this movie is fascinating.
Oh yeah, it is.
That was really interesting. They're almost the villains.
Yes, exactly. At the end, they all do their high schools, all that, and the funny line. At least we're not a plutocracy run by Big Pharma.
That's right.
It always gets a laugh. And we've had 2 U.S. Premieres, and both times the Americans laughed out loud a lot at that line. So I was like hoping we weren't insulting them, but they have a good sense of humor too. So.
I was wondering about that. I was wondering how the American audience would.
Yeah, I know. No, they took it and they laughed in all the right places, even though a lot of Americans might not know a lot about Canada, but the film does play well here. It really, the laughter in the audience is infectious and thunderous and really, really great. Obviously there'll be a few jokes that they won't quite get, but it plays so well in Canada. I mean, every time I go to the theater, I'm so proud of this movie and the laughs that we get.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to, again, that there's this sort of ubiquitous style of storytelling. Like, everybody sort of gets it.
Yeah.
It seems to apply to everyone in some way or another. Maybe that's a gross exaggeration, but it feels that way. It feels like it's.
Yeah. I think it goes to all age demographics. That's what sales marketers and marketing people want. They want a film that translates into every audience group. So I have a daughter here in LA. She's 19 now, but when I showed her the film, she was 18, and it was all her. It was about 10 of her friends, California friends, and they're all on their phones. And I showed them Drinkwater early on at their house. I brought a screen and a little projector and all that stuff. And they were engaged for the full 2 hours. Like they watched the movie, they laughed. Like I didn't stand there. I went in the kitchen behind the screen so they couldn't see me. But they were laughing at the right places. They were like oohing and awing. And when they have the big kiss, they're like, oh, like so it works for me as you go, I keep saying air quotes, with California teenagers to be engaged in a very Canadian film. To me, that was the highest I could ask for, because it was just like, wow, okay, cool. I got their attention for almost 2 hours, which is amazing nowadays to have teenagers pay attention and not be on their phones. So that was kind of cool. That was my real barometer for this movie. I said, because they were one of the first teenagers to see it, and I was like, okay, yeah, we did something. I'm an old guy, and somehow I managed to get the teenage persona down.
That's awesome. That's great. I wanted to ask you a little bit of the idea of suffering together. That was something I sort of wondered about this particular story. It seems like many of these characters are sort of broken; they're grieving. But there's something, but it's not their grief that draws them together, but this idea that maybe we need each other along to get through, even in the final race, without giving any spoilers of sort of how that manifests itself.
Right. And
I
I
was
think
wondering what that means to you. Sorry.
Yeah, I think no, sorry, that's a great question. No one's ever asked that question. I think obviously, without suffering you don't have happiness. Without happiness you don't have suffering, I think, because you need both ends of the spectrum to make you realize that you need that high of laughter, because if you have laughter all the time, you don't think it's special. But if you do have grief and you do have suffering, you need that camaraderie of another human being that can sense your pain and sense your loss or sense your suffering and be able to respond just humanly and without thinking. And then, like in the race, as you alluded to, there's that moment and you just go, well, that's a cool moment, because they didn't even think about it. We just did it. So that's the thing throughout this movie, is that there is some pain and suffering, but yet there's joy in it because someone else has had the same thing. As we all think, oh, we're the only person that's ever fallen in love and got crushed as a high school sweetheart. But, I even tell my daughter that. I say, it happened to your dad and your mom. It's going to happen to you at some point, but you need that. You need those highs and lows to make them more valuable to each other. It's like, I guess, the yin and the yang, sort of, if you want to go there. But yeah, and I think that film needs it. I mean, it's obviously a comedy, but we wanted to have those serious moments just to kind of bring you down for a second and go, okay, there's reality. Not everyone's going to be happy and go lucky the whole time. And I think if we did that, made it happy the whole time, the movie would be a lot flatter, outcome, which we don't want. We want people to just go, yeah, I'm really glad I saw that.
Well, and to be honest, and like you said, the film's hilarious. It's a lot of fun. It's like it's a very positive, upbeat movie. But there's sort of a frankness about it, and the reality of what people are dealing with that I really appreciated.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I'm glad you got that, because most people just focus on the comedy. So there is that underlying tone that we wanted to make sure it was in there, because not everybody's life is perfect, and far from it. So I think people connect to the movie because of that. They go, yeah, I've had that loss, I've had that suffering, but yeah, I've had some great laughs, and then this movie, it takes me away from that pain and suffering. Maybe people that come to the theater that night are in the midst of that. But boy, this movie can take them away for 2 hours. That's fantastic. That's the best gift I could have for an audience member. And I've had that. I've had a ER nurse that said, I've dealt with, been COVID the last 2 years, blah, 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 and it's been horrible. Says, your movie took me away. I didn't think of my job once for 2 hours. And I said, well, that's the one thing I could ask for. If anyone, one person, two people, whatever, that can be affected by this movie and make them forget about their problems. And so that made me really happy when I heard that. It was one of my very first screenings too. And it just, that legacy has just stayed with me for the last year and a half.
Wow, that's huge. That is.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And I've heard that from a few other people. Like we just played in Victoria last week, and this one lady said the same thing. She says, I'm going through a lot right now, but your film made me forget everything I'm going through. And I was like, that's awesome. And that just made me so happy, So that's the moment where you go, yep, good. We've done something great here,
Well, absolutely. And a little bit of Corey Hart will always do that as well.
Never surrender. That's the key. See, that's how the film wraps up. You get to never, and I think it's a great analogy for this whole story. It's just never surrender. When the chips are down, you just got to climb on top and get to the top. So yeah, that was a great song selection. I think that one really worked. And all those songs I grew up with, which is the real why they're in the movie. just every one of them just brings me back to playing the records back in the day. And I still have all those albums, like the original albums. So that's kind of cool. And I've been getting back into vinyl and listening to a lot of them now. Yeah, I think we created a really great soundtrack. And yeah.
Oh, the soundtrack's amazing. And this funny thing is, watching the film, it's like, I know this takes place in present day. I know,
Right.
but you know, you see every now and then you see a cell phone pop up or some sort of reference.
Right.
It doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack is part of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's why we got that old crappy Gremlin, and all the cars in the movie are relatively old. So it's just like weird, like, what era is this in? How do they have cell phones? Yeah, and that to me is the beauty of it. And even his cell phone is the old click one, you know, so we didn't want to get into iPhones and things like that. So it was all thought out. Like I really wanted to make sure that the audience was like, well, what does this take place now? Or is it, you know, but it's that great ambiguity. And then eventually you don't care. And to me, that's the sign of a good movie. If you go in, you're starting to analyze things, but then you just get sucked in for the hour and a half. That to me is, I've done my job. I made you happy. I made you tap your toes, you know. And I even go to the screenings and I see people just nodding their heads to the music and Loverboy, Turn Me Loose, you know. And I just go, that's awesome. You know, 'cause you're affecting people and it's so cool. So, yeah. But I really hope people go to see this movie because it's people like you that give us these amazing reviews, and we really appreciate that. Well, people will read it and go, holy shit, I need to go see this movie. I never even heard about it, whatever, you know. So we're really hoping the word gets out, word of mouth, because, you know, we don't have any money for advertising. So we're really trying to make sure that, you know, great reviewers like you like the film, and we'll tell everyone to go see it. And I'm pushing it on my social media, and, you know, I'm flying to Vancouver now to do the screening tomorrow night with Daniel and Louriza. So we're just fun. Like the Q&A is always a blast. So we always have a good time. So, but yeah, we really appreciate you spreading the word for us. It means a lot.
Well, I appreciate it too. I really do agree with you. I hope that everybody goes see the film because it's so much fun. And here, a free marketing tip: get on TikTok and try and start a trend where people are doing his dance to the shoes.
That's a good idea. That's not a bad idea. I'm gonna get Angie to work on that. Yeah, I'm not on TikTok. Yeah, I'm not on TikTok, so we'll have to do that. That would be cool. Get a viral video going, or get audience members to be doing it after the movie.
That's right.
That'd be funny. Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, I'm going to think about that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Stephen, thanks so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I wish you the
My
best.
pleasure.
Best of luck with the film. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time and great questions, by the way. I really appreciate it. Got to go catch my flight now, I think.
Okay.
Take care. Good talking to you.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.